Welcome to Higher Density Living. We're back for part 2. I don't even know if it's part 2 of the conscious channeling material from February 6, 2016 with the entity group known as Quo. Mm-hmm. And we're reviewing this material from lnlresearch.org. So just as a little recap, we originally talked in the previous part of the episode about the transition from third to fourth density. And what they coined in the Confederation is a thing called a harvest. No, you're not getting just raked up in alien craft or harvested with a scythe or anything like that. The idea is that the spirit of the human being in the consciousness block evolves to a certain point where it's passing from perfect self-awareness. It's aware of its decision-making. Now it can focus on the understanding of others. That unity, that universal love, which means universal understanding.
Well, let's explain this too, because I think this is very important. Mm-hmm. So, because everybody's like saying, oh, these are alien beings and there's alien spacecraft and all that stuff. And Ra made it very clear, and we talked about this before, they're not supposed to be here.
No.
So if a ship is here, it's going against
your free will.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be Orion group or whatever it is. But so those that are here, you know, they could... I imagine, I don't say that it's nefarious.
No.
It could be they could still be good in the sense of do good things, but they'd be service to self.
Think about how much that upsets the religious apple cart. Some people have an understanding of physics, our world, how they think the universe was created, how, you know, their God defines it. Mm-hmm. And then something shows up which they can't explain. It's not in their religious text to explain whatever this thing might be. So if there's a more advanced civilization that does show up in a craft and shows themselves at large to a group, well, that's interesting. What is that going to do when that group which they're showing themselves to, it debases their reality? It's too harsh too quickly.
Yes.
It's an incorrect format.
It goes against the free will, like you said.
It goes against that natural free will of what is really occurring
of us
here.
evolving as a human species.
Right, at the pace we choose to evolve at.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. So I want people to understand that because you go to all these alien conferences and all this stuff, and I got sexually probed, and the list goes on and on.
That doesn't seem right.
From all aliens, yeah. So, but this is not what this group is not that.
No, they are strictly a group that does conversation from the Confederation through channeling. Mm-hmm. You have narrow and wideband channels. This is one that is slightly wider than Ra, which means that their level of precision and development and evolution of their spirit where they are in density is that underneath Ra, but still the quality of what they are teaching is still fantastic.
Because they're millions of years ahead of us.
Right. That's a lot of understanding.
Great quality.
And if you think about it strictly from the Darwinian standpoint, Jason, if humans have been around for 4.5 million years, natural Homo sapiens to this planet, it's not there. If you think about what another couple million of an advanced civilization does and the compound of technology and all that other.
Yeah, and they don't want to risk any of that. You don't want an aircraft falling down like in Roswell or whatever, and then the military-industrial complex getting it, and then now you have a superpower that has an alien.
The risk is too high.
It's too high.
Yeah.
You could create such an imbalance, and that's not what they want from third to fourth. So let's start this off. He says, you ask, what is the progress of the harvest? Explain the harvest real quick.
Again, the harvest is the transition from third density to fourth. So you can either be harvested, right, where the spirit's like, I'm going to then reincarnate for my next experience, learning experience of this illusion, in a new meat suit, and my practice is going to be in the lowest form of universal love, which means universal understanding. It's the heart chakra area.
Yeah, and he gets into that. He says, indeed, the one known as Jesus the Christ, so that there was those among his group that would see the harvest.
Can we be clear here? The one known as. Yeah. They don't define him by that name.
Right.
They're not saying that is his official name.
Yes.
They're just stating that society, our society, knows it as such.
Well, I mean, Jesus was such a common. It was Yeshua was one of the most common names back then.
Yeah, Yeshua, all that stuff, right.
The harvest is that which begins first in those minds, and especially in those hearts that are prepared to welcome and enjoy the vibrations of love and understanding.
Okay. So we are in an illusion, and they are saying that here's the start, where the heart chakra can really pull in the other vibrations brought about by other human beings. Because if you can absorb those and understand, that creates that love, which is that unifying understanding of the other self. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's the first phases. But you can't feel those vibrations unless you're in third density and understand your own self-awareness. You have to be aware of that feeling of understanding. that's occurring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's all about love and understanding. That is, like you said, that is that first.
What's that thing you keep
step.
repeating to yourself?
Yeah, I have it right here.
You keep saying that you are love and understanding.
Yeah, I have it right here. I choose loving awareness, or I use the word God, but
that's fine.
Fill my heart with loving awareness. I just constantly want to have this ability to have. I want to, in any situation I'm at, if I go into a situation, even if maybe it's a difficult situation or whatever, I'm repeating this, you call it affirmation or whatever, but I'm repeating this, and I want to have loving awareness when I go in there. I want to be fully present in the full moment, which is love and understanding.
Correct.
Because being fully aware in the moment is understanding.
Yeah. You're you are opening yourself up and greeting the opportunity of whatever you're about to be in.
Yes. And so he says this, thus there are many who have been able to harvest themselves into the fourth density positive over the last few thousand of your years.
Wow. So fantastic. Before the entire planet has transitioned itself, starting in 1986 for the change in our local solar sector relative to the central sun of our galaxy. I know that's a lot to chew on. But individuals still have the ability to harvest outside of that timeline, that very strong probability, very physical timeline that is occurring with our planet. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so that's what they chose to do.
And he says, and they at this time are preparing to welcome their brothers and sisters of the greater population of planet Earth that will be harvested as the, shall we say, striking of the hour, on the infinite clock of destiny. I think it's really important, those commas.
So
There's
much.
pauses.
Yeah, there has to be.
So let's start at the first one. He says, a planet Earth that we harvested at the,
Yeah. It will be harvested at the.
Yeah.
And that comma is defining a moment.
Yes.
They're causing you to consciously pause in that moment to talk about the shall we say. So hold on.
And then he says, yeah, shall we say, So he's separating. It's like, this is what we're saying.
We're going to take a breath.
Yeah. And then striking of the hour,
Correct.
On the infinite clock of destiny.
Right. So clocks are circular, right?
Yes.
They just spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. It's an infinite clock. But there's a measurement of that time. Every cycle is a new strike.
Yes.
Right? And that's what they're talking about. And destiny is only defined as the probability of cause and effect. Our planet spinning, our local solar sector, it is destined to get closer to the central sun due to gravity and physics of creation.
I love that. Yes.
That it is defined by that. It has a natural destiny, a natural occurrence of cause and effect that will lead it to that central area.
Yes, yes.
And we are riding that wave that has to occur.
Yeah, and he says, your harvest is that which has begun.
It began in 1986.
Those entities now passing from your illusion. Mm-hmm. I love that. Your world is an illusion, people.
It's awesome.
The minute you begin to understand that,
it's a playground for
and
learning.
that you're placing meaning.
Yeah.
Your ego is placing meaning on everything that you are interfering with, accessing. It's all, whether you're Elon Musk and you're going on Twitter to give 20% of your money away or solve world hunger or whatever it is, put rockets in space, that's his illusion.
That's this idea that he's living in.
Yeah, and so that's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's the thoughts,
it's
ideas.
Thoughts.
Yeah, that's it.
It's literally a world of thought.
It's an illusion. When you begin to understand that, then you can begin to understand reality. He says, through the door that you call death are walking the steps of light to see if they have the ability to walk and enjoy the brighter light.
Yeah.
So let's stop right there. Yeah. So we're talking about death entering into.
This is really interesting because this is also spoken about by Plejaren spirit teachings from Billy Meyer. There's a moment at death where if there has been enough experience baked into the consciousness block of the individual that they greet death with joy. So you know when some people die, they're like smiling and it's like very peaceful for them, mm-hmm. and other people die in fear. There's a lot of things that are happening baked into that life that well up all at one moment,
right?
To be completely decompressed, right, digested and understood by the mind and the spirit at that moment.
Yeah, and they say as these entities move into this light, they move as far as is possible without the light becoming too glaring.
Right. So they get as close as they can to it, right? You have that transition over to the spirit.
Everybody says they see a bright light.
The spirit realm. Yeah, great. There's light. That makes sense, right? Because light is knowledge. It's that awareness, right? You're now becoming aware of the true self. It's always lit. It's always luminescent. It's never dark. They're going to push as far as they can, and depending on how much they have learned through the experience of this life and this current illusion, allows them to push all the way through, to reach.
Yeah, and so he's going to get, this is why I like his writing or their channeling, because he gets so poetic. He's just like he has masterpiece of words. He's not so logical like Ra is. He's more like our style. This is like such beautiful poetry right here. He says, "And those who have become as the gathering choir that sings the glorious hallelujah to the one Creator, welcome others who also pass through the doors of death, only to be reborn into the love and light of the one in another illusion."
So what are they talking about? You are greeted with great joy. Congratulations with that past experience.
Yes.
Time for a next round.
Yes.
And you will do it millions and millions and millions of times, and there will always be all of that giving light and understanding that comes from creation itself.
And he says that the light of the one in another illusion, and he says a grander illusion, more densely packed with light.
Well, that's what happens.
With love, with understanding, with cooperation, with community, with the joint effort towards further seeking of the one Creator.
Fourth density. Mm-hmm. There is a density of light. There's more understanding that gets packed into that experience.
You're not going to hell.
No.
Where there's worms and flames. You're going to be reborn into another grander illusion. That's light and love and understanding and community and cooperation. These are the things that you have to look forward to when you die.
Right. And
it's a beautiful thing.
It's an illusion because it's not perfect truth.
Right.
Because if you knew perfect truth, you would be one with creation itself.
Yes.
You're working through it.
Right.
It becomes more and more of an illusion until...
One creation was at 8th density?
That's at 8th.
Yeah,
That's when you hit the octave.
Yeah.
You know, like people singing? Yeah, correct.
Thus, in this sense, your harvest has begun. But we realize that you mean, what shall it be complete? This, my friends... See, I love this quote.
That's great.
This, my friends, is that which is the question for all entities who observe now the little planet Earth upon which you dwell. We make... I was listening to a scientist yesterday, and he's like, it's highly... not probable that there are other planets and we're the only ones. This dude says, for all entities who observe now the little planet on Earth upon which you dwell. Because he's like, you know what? There's infinite universes.
And remember how we think we're like so significant?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
He says it.
Our egos are so
Earth.
large. Planet Earth is so tiny. Across the vast, infinite amount of the expanse of this cosmos and the many other that are out there.
Yeah, and you're just a little planet that's transitioning from 3rd to 4th.
And we're just murdering one another.
That's all.
We're creating problems and murdering one another on just like this small speck of an illusion
but you think
in
you're
the darkness.
So badass.
Oh,
you're
gosh.
just think about that. You're a small little planet among gazillions.
Yeah.
That's transitioning from 3rd to 4th.
Okay.
There's 4th density planets. There's gazillions of those. There's 5th density, gazillions of those.
We are on the outer reaches of our current galaxy. What does that mean? Less developed.
Yes.
The innermost parts is where time has coalesced.
Wouldn't it be cool, though? I mean, just because you could dream, wouldn't it be cool to go to a 4th density planet and just walk around and chill and see how the people act?
Even 5th.
Telepathy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even 5th, they're just so in it. Or upper 4th.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, what's going on over here?
Yeah, we probably wouldn't even begin to understand.
No.
So he says, and this is really interesting, for there is much confusion with the population of your planet this time.
Confusion.
And there is the free will of so many entities, cultures and nationalities, creeds, religions, sects, and so forth, that see this great time, each through individual eyes, through all share the feeling, the desire, the promise of the one Creator. So this is really important because you're 3rd density. Mm-hmm. So we're 3rd density and you're Muslim.
Yep.
Do you have love and understanding?
Sure you do.
Do you have, are you going towards that light?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That's
what
great.
he's saying.
It doesn't matter what religion or whatever it is.
It's just seeing through different eyes.
But we're all headed towards the same point, regardless of how slow or fast we get there, regardless of what religion may, block us in the perspective or what have you, we get there. It's not wrong.
No.
You're just learning.
Yes.
And if you choose that path of learning, it all ends up at the same point.
So stop saying that my religion's right and yours is wrong.
It's not. Nothing. None of them are right.
It's just, he says, each through individual eyes, through all share the feeling, the desire, the promise of the one Creator to welcome the children home to a grander home, a more loving home, where all are welcome eventually.
It's awesome. Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
At one point, you will be welcomed.
As you're evolving, you're moving along.
That's all you got to do.
It's such a beautiful narrative.
Let go of everything.
Yes.
Let go.
Yeah, you're fine.
Relax. Everything's cool.
You got 1,000 more meat suits to go through. You'll be great.
You can be Catholic for 20 of them, Muslim for 500.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yep.
You're going to get there.
You're going to get there. Yep. We are aware that you have information that suggests there is a great span of time and your measure, that may be the potential experience of the last of the third density and the complete experience of the fourth density.
Okay, so what they were saying is that Ra had given this group a timeline.
Yes.
For when third density began on this planet and when it ended. That's what they're talking about. And so they're saying, we understand that you are aware for how you measure time,
Right.
the great span of that transition.
But I think this is so beautiful because he comes in, Raw's so dense and logical, and it takes somebody like, you can understand it. I have a hard time with Raw. I have the Law of One books up there.
I'm not sure if that's a
But
compliment
this makes
or a
sense.
slap in the face.
No, it's a compliment. He says this because we get into Raw and then people are like, well, this is 1980 and this is 2010 and this is this and this and this. He said, this time measurement.
That's all it is.
Reaching upwards to 600 and 700 of your years is still a possibility. Though, so this is not set in time.
No.
He says, though there are factors of free will of the great masses of peoples upon your planet to consider.
Do you remember when Ra said, they had asked, well, what about transitioning to fourth? They said, although it is highly improbable that we will do it overnight, the free will of everyone.
Yes.
It is not impossible.
Yeah.
That's all. And they're saying that again here. There is still a breadth of time through our perspectives and the free will of choice of people to come together and say, are we going to do it now? Or are we going to stretch this on for another 600 years?
Yeah, they're not going to say, okay, this is going to happen in 600 years. You're going to get somebody's free will then.
Yeah, you can't.
We're moving to fourth density in 700 years.
Well, that makes
You can't do that.
No, it'll say that over that time, there will be some point of transition.
Yeah.
Where the mass, the majority.
Yes.
Well, you know what the thing that I think of? Is that like a cycle?
Mm-hmm.
Is that like a spirit cycle on the earth? Like how 600-700 years for it takes for like a whole cycle of people to clear out and a whole new cycle to come in.
Yes.
You
That
see what I'm
would
saying?
make sense. I mean, think 600 years ago.
Yeah. Well, think about how much your grandmother and seven
Yes.
grandmothers back. Think about how their knowledge has changed.
Well, they didn't have knowledge.
No, I know that. So 7 generations of new understanding.
They had folklore.
Yeah, I know.
They believed dragons would come down and go in your chimney and steal stuff, and they would kill you because they thought you were a witch.
Yeah, and then you started taking all the financial gain of the town.
I mean, that's what it was all. There wasn't books to read.
No.
It was the knowledge was just transferred from stories.
Right. So
That's all.
So think about how it's 600 years would do
Yeah.
for people that choose to reconsider under their own free will what they want to do.
And I think it's not just a cycle. I think it's just multiplying every year upon itself. Because think how much we've changed in the last 10 years.
It's compounding.
Yeah. So I could imagine 50 years from now,
Crazy.
what this country is going to look like.
Yeah.
We're going to be all decentralized. Governments will probably be weak. I would think.
Our government will decentralize itself. Guaranteed, heretofore, the United States breaks up into 5 separate geographic political areas.
That makes sense.
It'll do it.
Yeah, it's going to fracture.
It will.
Yeah, there's too much, especially now.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas would love to be their own little country.
Oh, they would love that.
Those guys. There are at this time many entities and group, such as this group, that work to increase the harvest in a geometric fashion.
Oh, God.
You are aware of the concept of the doubling, which those of Ra spoke of.
Okay, so this is the law of doubling.
Right.
Ra's spiritual law of squares, and they tried to give a mathematic example, and I still haven't worked it out because they're way above, right? But the whole idea in the geometric fashion is that, Jason, if I share a piece of knowledge with you and you ingest it, we have doubled the power of that understanding. We have increased the calling by a factor of 2. It's huge. Then what happens when we tell 3 people? Those 3 tell another 3. The magnification, this doubling that occurs, becomes so supermassive that this geometric fashion, which Ross spoke of, that acts as that cornerstone for individuals to be like, time to listen, time to wake up.
Right.
And if you do that law of doubling over 600-700 years, where one person shares with another and they share with another too, at that point, it's going to be so prevalent, creational laws, all these things, this level of understanding, people are like, holy smokes. Why didn't we see this?
Well, I mean, we're on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
We have thousands of listeners that download this. So we're doubling.
That's what we do.
And our technology is affording us that opportunity, which wasn't before.
We're using technology to expound upon creational laws.
Yeah, and he talks about critical mass, and that's in the sense of where you have, we talked about this before, where you have most of the planetary population, moving in that direction. And he says the mass is that which approaches in time-space, and it's analog of space-time, so that there are many who will find that they're able to partake in this harvest.
Right. In the time-space, our consciousness, our understanding, our spirit, they're like, go time. I get it. I want to live and walk in this format. I want to understand creation, right? And my experience through this lens.
Yeah, and he says, for it appears now that which the best efforts of all those teachers and guides, students and helpers, with the birth of this planet, that there shall not be more than 2 additional incarnations necessary for the completion of this harvest.
So that's so this is making sense. There's, you can incarnate immediately, or you can wait a little bit of time to digest. 600 to 700 years makes sense. So what this is telling me is that a lot of people come back on this planet to incarnate again.
Yes.
2 more times, and then they're like, I get it now.
Yeah.
It's going to take 2 more run-throughs for a grander majority for them to come to the understanding in time-space.
Mm-hmm.
So in their mind, to then bring that into the physical, the analog of space-time, to literally walk and understand in 4th density.
Yeah, and Trump and Biden, it may take them 5 or 6 more times, but
500 or 600.
That's a joke. 500-600 more times. Both of them are cut from the same
cloth.
Yes. Realize, my friends, that the free will of your planet is most difficult to predict.
Isn't that great? Do you know there's a show that came out, and I'm going to talk about this.
Yes.
Isaac Asimov wrote something in The Foundation, and this guy uses a psychogeometry or something like that to do a predictive calculus on the movement of populations. But what they can't account for is the movement of one individual itself in their probabilities.
Yes.
They said free will is too difficult for them to actually put a mathematical number on.
We don't know. I mean, you don't know what led you to Albuquerque, me to Albuquerque, and then we coalesced together. How do you predictably
we both came
put that?
here.
Yes. How do you, I mean, you could probably find some similarities in the data.
But there's so much.
Yeah, there's so much with the free will. I love this. He says, and this is something I want us to stop and talk about a little bit. Realize, my friends, that the free will of your planet is most difficult to predict, for there are forces moving from Ancient of Days that would work against such harvest. Now, the Bible talks about Ancient of Days a lot. So I want to stop there because this is in a lot of spiritual teachings, Ancient of Days. We should look that up, Ancient of Days. That'd be interesting to see what they say. It's specifically Ancient of Days. That would work against such harvest because they're being purposeful with their words. Every word has a purpose. And this is what I want to get into.
Ancient of Days.
I think it's a Jewish terminology.
Yeah, it is. It is another people referring to this idea of creation, of a God, one of many. If you go back to the earlier parts of the Aramaic, right, later translated into the Greek, it's a name for God, right? A king or queen of wisdom.
Right.
We have to break this down because there's a lot going on just in this one sentence. So do you mind if we do that?
Yeah. Let's do the Ancient of Days.
Yeah.
And then the next episode, we're going to get into the nefarious beings.
All right. Yeah. So
because he gets into that. We're going to get into nefarious beings that are trying to destroy the harvest.
Okay. So free will is difficult to predict, like we said before.
Right.
People make their choices. It's hard to put the math on it, right? When they speak about forces moving from Ancient of Days, there were Yahwehs, Isfiches, kings or queens of wisdom, highly advanced groups that pre-populated on this planet before. They created a line of probabilities that are occurring and are still playing out. Does that make sense?
Well, they were hybrids.
Yeah, they were hybrids, right?
I mean,
so they came
whether they were full aliens, what we would consider aliens, or whether they were hybrid aliens, they brought that.
They came that down.
Ancient wisdom.
They've mated with the 4.5 million year old
Right.
Evas on planet Earth, which were the earliest human beings, right? So when they're down here, there's a probability line that creates. It's a cause and effect, a causal line.
Right.
Those probabilities are so baked in, so entrenched to the human process that we are still working through them, even though they are so old. It's in our genetics. They're still there. We still work through those things. They haven't left us. So when they talk about the Ancient of Days, it's the earlier beings that came down, right? They were helping develop these human beings, this new planet, this new sort of breeding, crossbreeding, genetic experiments, whatever you want to call it. We're still working through that. Those things weren't necessarily positive when they came down. They went against the free will of those naturally occurring 4.5 million year old terrestrial human beings, not extraterrestrial, but terrestrial human beings.
Right.
Which they came in and interjected on the free will.
Yeah, that the Bible calls them fallen angels, but it's an alien being where they could fly or something.
Very intelligent,
yes,
but takes a service to self effort and
yes.
says, we want to just redefine what this population looks like without letting it evolve under its own free will.
Yeah, they took the free will of others. And
so that right there working out of that is something that could delay that harvest, because there are things that are baked in to our genetic coding in our consciousness blocks that are creating barriers to us moving towards that level of love and understanding of the fourth density.
And we'll get into, on the next episode, we'll get into this a little bit more. We'll get into these crazy creatures. No, they're not creatures.
Yeah.
But these
Highly evolved.
nefarious
Yeah.
service to self beings.
Very service to self.